They say a single snapshot can freeze time, a moment of hope, excitement, or pure, unfiltered love. For Cassandra Harrington, that snapshot was her unborn child's very first ultrasound. For Alexander Montclair, it was nothing more than an inconvenient photo on his phone. When he deleted it, he did more than clear up space. He shattered her trust and rattled the foundation of their opulent life. Yet in a twist that would make even the wealthiest tremble, Cassandra's retribution came swiftly if their child's image wasn't worth keeping. Then Alexander's name wasn't worth inheriting. And so began their war of hearts and fortunes. Alexander Montclair grew up surrounded by the mild hum of private jets and the gleam of crystal chandeliers. The Montclair family's legacy dated back to the late 19th century, rumored to have begun with an audacious railroad investment that put them on the map. Now the Montclairs presided over a fortune of staggering proportions tucked away in a labyrinth of trusts, offshore accounts, and philanthropic foundations. As a child, Alexander, often called Xander, ran through the halls of the Montclair mansion in upstate New York, chasing imaginary foes with a wooden sword. His mother, Elizabeth Montclair, was a renowned socialite who chaired charity galas at the Guggenheim and rubbed shoulders with the likes of the Rockefeller clan. His father, Charles Montclair, seldom ventured away from the boardroom of Montclair Holdings, an empire that spanned real estate, venture capital, and gold reserves. By the time Xander was 14, he'd learned how to discuss the yield curve over dinner. He wore custom suits to family gatherings and drank sparkling cider out of champagne flutes. Despite the comfort of wealth, his life always felt prescribed a path carefully curated by his parents, so that he might one day carry on the Montclair name with an impeccable reputation. Across town, in a much more modest setting, Cassandra Harrington was the daughter of Mary and Patrick Harrington, two high school teachers who worked tirelessly to give her a good life. Their home was small, but filled with warmth, the living room stacked with well-loved books and the scent of fresh-baked bread wafting from the kitchen. Cassie, as she was known, was never spoiled with luxuries, but she was spoiled with love. When she did well in school, her parents framed her report cards. Every achievement, no matter how small, was celebrated with a homemade cake or a family dinner. Early on, Cassandra realized that knowledge could take her places that money alone could not. She applied herself relentlessly, winning science fairs, debate contests, and writing competitions. By the end of high school, she had set her sights on an Ivy League education, dreaming that one day she would become the first in her family to hold a doctorate. Their paths crossed for the first time at a summer internship program in Manhattan, a highly competitive spot at a financial consultancy called Sterling and Hyde. The program was geared toward future leaders, carefully selecting a handful of exceptional students from the country's top universities. Xander, of course, had been steered there by family connections. Cassie had gotten in on pure merit. The first day they arrived at the glass tower on Fifth Avenue with vastly different mindsets, Xander saw it as a stepping stone he was required to take another bullet point on a polished resume he'd inherited from his father's machinations. Cassie, however, saw it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that could catapult her into the realm of finance and philanthropy. They were paired for a marketing research project, an assignment to analyze the social impact investing landscape in emerging markets. It was meant to be a dull, yet vital exercise, sift through volumes of data, produce a professional deck, and present it to a panel of executives. But as they worked late nights in the office's 23rd floor corner, counting global investment returns and forging hypothetical strategies, they connected. Something in Cassie's grounded warmth drew out the boyish sincerity in Xander. And behind Xander's polished facade, Cassie could sense a loneliness that reminded her of her own insecurities. One evening after they'd stayed in the conference room well past sunset, Cassie asked, "What are you most afraid of?" Xander had looked up from the spreadsheets. "Not living up to everything my parents expect," he said softly. She nodded, surprised by his candor. "I'm afraid of failing. I can't let my parents' sacrifices go to waste." They shared a smile, an unspoken vow that they would both strive to break free from the chains of expectation, albeit in different ways. That night, as Cassie left the building, she realized she found Xander far more intriguing than she wanted to admit. Despite the differences in their upbringing, Xander and Cassie's camaraderie flourished. In the weeks that followed, they took breaks from their monotonous research to grab coffee at an Italian cafe around the corner, where Cassie insisted on paying her own way. Xander would tease, "You know, in my world, letting me pay is considered polite." She'd respond with a grin, "Not in mine. In my world, we share." If there was a single moment that sealed their fate, it might have been the night they pitched their findings to a panel of stern-faced executives at Sterling and Hyde. Cassie led the presentation with undeniable confidence, her voice steady and her logic sharp. Xander supported her with poised remarks, weaving in personal anecdotes about philanthropic efforts he'd seen his parents undertake. When the presentation ended, they received a standing ovation, something virtually unheard of for interns. Their supervisor, Ronald Friedman, a hard-nosed consultant who rarely doled out praise, pulled them aside. "Excellent work, both of you," he said. "I wouldn't be surprised if you two end up working here full-time. Keep your phones on after graduation. We'll be calling." The after-party spilled into a local bar in Midtown, a place with neon lights and lively music. Cassie and Xander found a quiet booth in the corner to talk. She told him about her dream to create a scholarship fund for underprivileged students in her hometown, the sort of thing that would allow people with her background to reach places they could only imagine. He told her about how hollow he sometimes felt, living in the shadow of his family's success. Sometimes he admitted swirling the ice in his drink. "I'm not sure if I'm making the choices, or if they're already made for me." Cassie reached across the table and put a hand over his. "You can take control of your own life. It's scary. But you're allowed to carve your own path, even if your parents don't like it." He looked at her. For a split second, he caught a glimpse of something deeply comforting in her eyes, the promise of unconditional support. In that moment, he was sure of one thing. Cassandra Harrington was the only person who truly understood him. The internship concluded, and as the summer waned, they parted ways. Cassie returned to her final year at Harvard, juggling a demanding course load and an extracurricular swirl of philanthropic clubs. Xander, meanwhile, went back to Princeton, where he was finishing his senior year in economics. The distance between Cambridge and Princeton wasn't vast, but balancing the demands of two Ivy League programs proved challenging. Phone calls sometimes turned into hurried texts, and weeks could pass without a single visit. Yet they persevered. When Xander visited her in Boston, they would walk along the Charles River, discussing everything from climate change to the philosophies of existentialism. When she visited him in New Jersey, they'd hole up in his dorm room with takeout pizza, binging documentaries, and daydreaming about the future. Cassie's scholarship fund idea grew stronger in their discussions, while Xander imagined launching a new venture that combined ethical investing with broad-scale social impact. By the time they both graduated, Cassie magna cum laude Xander with honors, They were deeply in love. Their first big step was a celebratory trip to Tuscany, financed largely by Xander's father, though Cassie chipped in her share. Among the rolling hills and vineyards, Cassie felt both exhilarated and slightly overwhelmed by his world's extravagance. One night after a sumptuous meal at a Michelin-starred restaurant, Cassie finally voiced her concern. "Xander, I'm not used to all this," she said, motioning to the fine dining around them. "I don't want to lose myself in someone else's wealth." He set down his fork. "If it ever becomes too much, just tell me. I don't want you to feel overshadowed. I love you for you, not because of where I come from." Her lips curled into a soft smile. "I know." She paused, thinking carefully. "Your family's world is incredible, but so is mine. I don't want one to swallow the other." He took her hand. "They don't have to. We'll create something new together." It was a promise they sealed under the Tuscan sunset, whispering vows that would in time be tested more fiercely than they could have imagined. Shortly after returning from Tuscany, the phone calls came from Sterling and Hyde. They wanted both Cassie and Xander in their top-tier associate program, an unparalleled opportunity for ambitious graduates. Cassie, delighted, accepted with no hesitation. Xander followed suit, and within weeks they found themselves sharing a modern loft in Tribeca. Xander's parents helped with the down payment, despite Cassie's initial protests. Their new life had a frenetic pace, commuting on the subway for Cassie black car service for Xander when he had to rush between meetings and evening get-togethers with their fellow associates. They were rising stars in the finance world, consistently praised for their innovative ideas and impeccable work ethic. When they combined forces on client presentations, even the most stoic partners at Sterling and Hyde took notice. Yet beneath the surface, small cracks formed. Cassie still insisted on splitting expenses 50-50, but Xander's resources were nearly limitless. Though he never flaunted it intentionally, his casual references to lavish parties or exclusive clubs sometimes left Cassie feeling uncomfortable. In truth, it wasn't Xander who made her feel that way. It was the weight of his family name that always seemed to loom. Matters reached a tipping point when Cassie launched her beloved project, the Harrington Scholarship Fund. She'd saved diligently, and with the support of a few philanthropic contacts at the firm, she managed to raise an initial seed fund. Xander congratulated her enthusiastically, offering to help scale the fund. However, Cassie declined his financial support. She wanted it to remain a grassroots initiative with a personal stamp, not a Montclair-funded enterprise. Their arguments were subtle at first. "But Cassie, you know I have connections that could triple this fund," Xander said one night over dinner. She pushed her plate aside, her appetite lost. "I appreciate it, but I want to do this on my own. Isn't that what we've always talked about? Creating our own paths?" He sighed. "Yes, of course. I just think we shouldn't reject resources that could help more students." She forced a smile, hoping to preserve the peace. "I need to do this my way. Please." He relented, but a quiet tension remained lurking at the edges of their relationship. Outside of work and their philanthropic endeavors, they tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, movie nights on their sofa, Sunday brunch with mimosas and homemade omelets. On weekends, they'd stroll through Central Park, daydreaming about the future, a brownstone in Brooklyn, maybe a summer cottage in the Hamptons. Children were sometimes mentioned with a whimsical someday. They both agreed on a small family, 1 or 2 kids at most. Cassie couldn't wait to be a mum, though she insisted she wouldn't let motherhood derail her career. Xander was supportive, claiming he'd be the kind of father who left board meetings early to catch his kids' soccer games. Everything changed on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Cassie felt an unshakable wave of nausea at the office. Her co-workers teased that it was from overwork, but a tiny voice inside whispered otherwise. She stopped by a pharmacy on her way home, purchased a pregnancy test with trembling hands, and took it alone in their loft's bathroom. The test showed positive. Heart pounding, she prepared dinner gnocchi with homemade sauce and waited for Xander to come home. The meal grew cold, and she grew worried. By the time he entered, the clock read nearly midnight, and he looked drained. Some major account crisis had kept him late at the office. Still, Cassie wanted to share the news in a special way. She lit a few candles, set the test on the table, and greeted him with an anxious smile. He noticed her strange demeanor immediately. "Is everything okay, Cass?" She pointed to the test. "I'm pregnant." A slow grin spread across his face, mixing with astonishment. He was speechless for several seconds. Then he hugged her tightly. She felt him trembling, though with excitement or fear, she couldn't quite tell. They spent the next hour whispering possibilities from baby names to how they would balance work. Cassie felt her chest swell with both excitement and uncertainty. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew this child would be the next step on a journey they'd face side by side. At least that's what she believed. As the weeks passed, Cassie's pregnancy became tangible. Morning sickness arrived with unrelenting precision, followed by cravings that ranged from sour candy to spicy noodles. Xander was attentive, rushing home from work with ginger tea or warm blankets, determined to be the ideal partner. Yet the swirl of their professional lives made it difficult to find a steady rhythm. Their first ultrasound appointment was a milestone. They booked it at Mount Sinai Hospital, paying extra for a private consultation. In that dimly lit exam room, Cassie held Xander's hand, heart pounding as the sonographer slowly revealed a small, flickering heartbeat on the screen. The sound of that rapid thump, thump, thump brought tears to Cassie's eyes. Xander leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers in a rare display of raw vulnerability. The technician printed out a few stills of the ultrasound. Xander immediately pulled out his phone and snapped pictures of the images, beaming. They left the hospital that day, feeling closer than ever, each armed with a digital keepsake of their growing child. Back at work, though, life continued at a relentless pace. Cassie's energy dwindled as her pregnancy progressed, but she refused to slow down. She didn't want to be perceived as weak or less committed. A major project landed on her desk, one that demanded late nights and weekend hours. Xander faced a similar onslaught of responsibilities, and they were often ships passing in the night. Then came the Montclair family pressure. Elizabeth Montclair insisted they join her for a gala at the Plaza, an event co-sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Cassie, now visibly pregnant, felt scrutinized by the upper echelons of New York society. One might think a Montclair expecting a child would be cause for grand celebration, but Elizabeth merely gave polite smiles and obligatory congratulations. It was clear she was more concerned about how to spin the pregnancy for social advantage than focusing on Cassie's well-being. After the gala, Elizabeth cornered Cassie in a hallway. "Have you considered finishing work early? You'll need time to prepare for the baby." Cassie stiffened. "I plan to work as long as I can. I have big projects in progress." Elizabeth patted Cassie's shoulder as if consoling a naive child. "Just remember what's most important, the Montclair legacy. We'll have to see about establishing a trust for the baby soon." Cassie forced a polite smile. The idea of her child being viewed as the next Montclair heir turned her stomach. She left the gala with an uneasy feeling, noticing Xander distracted by endless small talk with wealthy donors and socialites. When she tried to discuss her discomfort that night, he shrugged it off. "It's just how my mother is," he said, slipping off his tuxedo jacket. "Don't let it get to you." "That's easy for you to say," Cassie muttered, retreating to bed. A few days later, as she was searching Xander's phone for a snapshot from the gala, she stumbled upon a curious detail. The ultrasound pictures were missing. At first, she thought maybe the photos had been misplaced into another folder, so she searched meticulously. Nothing. When she confronted Xander about it, he laughed nervously. "I must have accidentally deleted them when I was clearing out space. My phone was running low on memory." Cassie's stomach tightened. "Low on memory? So you deleted our baby's ultrasound," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry, Cass. I didn't realize they were important to keep on the phone. I still have them on my computer somewhere, I think. I just didn't think it was a big deal." Her eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. Not a big deal. That was the first image we had of our child. He stepped closer, reaching for her arm, but she pulled away. "Cassie, it's just a photo. We'll get others. The baby's fine." She nodded mechanically, refusing to escalate the argument. But inside, she felt a small crack form in her trust. Was their child's future just another checkbox for him, something to be managed, like an investment portfolio? Over the following weeks, the tension simmered. Cassie felt as though Xander was increasingly distant. He spent more and more time with his father in closed-door discussions about some new investment scheme. Meanwhile, Cassie battled with the mounting stress of her job, her scholarship fund, and the emotional toll of pregnancy. She couldn't shake the feeling that Xander's careless deletion of the ultrasound image was symbolic of something bigger, a subtle disregard for what she cherished most. Still, she told herself they just needed time. They would find their balance again like they always had. Little did she know the real storm was yet to come. Word of the pregnancy spread through the Montclair family like wildfire. Charles Montclair Xander's father sent a message summoning them for a family meeting at the Montclair estate in upstate New York. The message was terse and formal, delivering little hint of paternal warmth. Cassie loathed the idea, but recognized it was inevitable. She and Xander drove up one Saturday morning, winding through the estate's perfectly manicured lawns, flanked by marble statues and meticulously trimmed rose bushes. When they entered the massive foyer, Elizabeth Montclair greeted them with a polite smile that never touched her eyes. Charles waited in the drawing room, swirling a glass of brandy, his expression unreadable. "Welcome," he said curtly. "I understand. Congratulations are in order." Cassie mustered a polite nod. Xander cleared his throat. "Yes, Dad. We're expecting a baby due in just under 6 months." Without missing a beat, Charles launched into business-like questions. "Have you talked to the Montclair financial advisors? Are you planning a Montclair christening tradition? Will the child's name reflect the family lineage?" The interrogation went on, peppered with references to a Montclair trust and estate planning. Cassie's frustration simmered. She had imagined a supportive environment, at least some genuine excitement about the new grandchild. Instead, it felt like an interview for a job she never asked for. Before she could lash out, Xander attempted to step in. "Dad, we'll handle our own estate planning. Cassie has her own ideas, and I want to respect that. We're not rushing into anything." Charles stiffened his gaze, flickering between Cassie's belly and Xander's tense posture. "Alexander, I'm merely ensuring the Montclair legacy is safeguarded. This is bigger than the two of you. It's about generations to come. Elizabeth clinked her teacup against the saucer. Perhaps we could finalize the baby's future with Patterson and Green, she said, referencing the esteemed law firm that had handled Montclair affairs for decades. I already placed a call to John Patterson, and he's ready to draft the documents. Cassie could no longer hold her tongue. We don't need a legal summons for our baby's future. We haven't even decided on a name yet, let alone the terms of a trust fund. Elizabeth glanced down her nose. Oh, Cassandra, dear, this is the Montclair way. If you want your child to benefit from the family resources, certain formalities must be followed. The words stung. Cassie understood the subtext. If you want our money, you play by our rules. She stood up abruptly. Xander, I need some air. He shot his parents a sharp look and followed Cassie out onto the estate's sprawling terrace. The morning sun glinted off the marble railing, and in the distance rolling hills painted a serene backdrop. But Cassie's mind was anything but calm. She turned to Xander. Is this what we have to put up with, your parents dictating our child's life before it's even born? He exhaled heavily. I know it's intrusive, but they mean well, sort of. It's just how they operate, always planning every financial angle. It's suffocating, Cassie whispered, tears threatening to spill. I feel like our child is becoming a pawn. Xander placed a hand on her shoulder. Cassie, trust me. We're in this together. I'll talk to them. Make them back off. I promise. Before they could continue, Charles stepped onto the terrace, brandy in hand. Son, we have more to discuss regarding the Montclair investment strategy for this year. Xander gave Cassie a weary look. Give me a minute. He squeezed her hand and followed his father back inside. Cassie took several deep breaths, trying to quell the sense of dread that gnawed at her. She had never felt more out of place, more like an outsider. This was Xander's world, a gilded core with obligations and expectations that reached far beyond love or partnership. She gazed at the manicured grounds, the opulence that once seemed so alluring. Now it felt like a trap. The Montclairs saw everything through the lens of legacy and inheritance. Cassie wanted a home built on love, mutual respect, and shared dreams, not strict financial frameworks. When Xander returned, he took her arm. We're leaving. They slipped out of the house with only a terse goodbye. In the car, Xander seemed distant, his brow furrowed in thought. Cassie ventured cautiously. You okay? He nodded stiffly. We just had some disagreements about how the family business should proceed. It's nothing you need to worry about. But she could feel something was gnawing at him. As the car cruised down the winding driveway, Cassie realized that the Montclair family feud was bigger than a trust fund. She sensed a seismic shift coming, one that could crush them if they weren't prepared. For the first time, Cassie was truly afraid of the future. She couldn't shake the memory of Xander shrugging off the ultrasound photos, an act she had tried to forgive but couldn't forget. If he was willing to placate his family at her expense, she needed to know. Because she wasn't about to compromise her child's autonomy for the sake of the Montclair name. Back in Tribeca, Cassie hoped to find refuge in the busyness of city life. She poured herself into her job at Sterling and Hyde, determined to prove that pregnancy wouldn't slow her down. Days turned into weeks. She began making time for prenatal yoga classes in the early mornings, and Xander sometimes joined her, albeit half-heartedly. They still shared a bed, a home, and a child on the way, but an invisible barrier had lodged itself between them. One evening, Cassie met her friend and mentor, Lisa Harrington. No relation, but an ironic coincidence at a cafe near Bryant Park. Lisa was a seasoned investment banker at Sterling and Hyde, someone Cassie admired for her unwavering confidence and no-nonsense approach. Over cappuccinos, Cassie confided her worries about the Montclair pressure. Lisa listened intently, fingers tapping on the porcelain cup. "Look, Cassie, I've dealt with the Montclairs professionally. They're very old money, very controlling. But you're strong. If you set firm boundaries, they might not like it, but they'll eventually respect you." Cassie exhaled. "I keep telling myself that. But it's different when you're carrying their heir, apparently." Lisa reached out and squeezed her hand. "Remember, this is your baby too. You have every right to shape your child's life. Don't let them push you around." Those words strengthened Cassie's resolve. But back at the loft, she found Xander burying himself in work, fielding late-night calls with his father, and disappearing to God knows where for investment meetings. Their arguments escalated. Cassie wanted Xander to set boundaries with his parents, but each time she brought it up, he'd deflect. "They're my parents, Cass. I can't just cut them off. They want to be involved in the baby's life." "They don't want to be involved," she countered. "They want to take over." "Stop exaggerating," he'd say in exasperation. "I'm doing the best I can." Cassie noticed that each time she tried to discuss their child's future, whether it be naming, schooling, or even simpler decisions like the nursery, Xander seemed disinterested or too busy to engage. Part of her tried to rationalize it. He was overwhelmed at work, anxious about fatherhood. But the other part remembered the ultrasound incident, the family meeting, and felt a growing sense of betrayal. The final straw came on a night Cassie was forced to stay at the office past midnight for a major client deliverable. Exhausted and swollen with pregnancy fatigue, she returned to the loft to find Xander's phone buzzing non-stop on the kitchen counter. He was nowhere in sight. She glanced at the screen, multiple missed calls and messages from Dad. A sinking feeling hit her gut. She had a fleeting thought. Is he with his father this late? She tried calling Xander, but he didn't answer. She left him a text, no response. By 2 a.m., he still wasn't home. Cassie cradled her belly on the couch, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. When Xander finally stumbled in at 3 a.m. disheveled and reeking of whiskey, Cassie leapt from the couch. "Where were you?" He blinked, confusion washing over his face. "With my father," he mumbled. "We had a disagreement. I needed a drink to calm down." Cassie's voice was shaky with anger. "You think it's okay to disappear on me all night? I'm pregnant, and you're out drinking." He rubbed his temples. "Cass, I'm sorry. Everything's a mess right now. My father wants me to take on a bigger role at Montclair Holdings. He's ready to expand in Asia. If I don't comply, he'll cut funding for half my projects, including my philanthropic ventures." She could hardly believe her ears. "Are you telling me you've been making side deals with your father behind my back?" He stared at the floor, an admission of guilt etched onto his face. Tears pooled in Cassie's eyes. "I've been begging you for weeks to stand up for us, for our child, and you've been negotiating for your own gain." He reached for her. "No, it's not like that. I thought if I could keep him happy, it would make things easier for us in the long run." She pulled away, pressing a palm to her belly. "Have you even considered what I want, or what our baby might want someday? Because you sure didn't consider it when you deleted our ultrasound." That remark hit him like a slap. "It was just a photo, Cass." She shook her head. anger flush in her cheeks. It was the first glimpse of our child. I'm starting to realize that you don't understand how much that meant to me. He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. I need some space, Xander. I can't keep fighting on two fronts, your family and you. Please go sleep in the guest room tonight. He looked wounded, but he nodded, staggering off without protest. Cassie collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming silently, her hand protectively over her belly. She felt something shift within her, a cold certainty that if Xander was more loyal to the Montclair empire than to their unborn child, she would have to take drastic measures to protect herself and her baby. Weeks passed, and Cassie drifted in a state of emotional numbness. She avoided deeper conversations with Xander, focusing on her health and planning for the baby's arrival. She consulted with her own lawyer, an old family friend, just to understand her rights in case the Montclairs tried to force her hand. Xander, for his part, seemed consumed with turmoil. He oscillated between desperate attempts at reconciliation, flowers, thoughtful dinners, gentle apologies, and vanishing acts in which he'd disappear to Montclair business meetings, or drown himself in spreadsheets at Sterling and Hyde. A turning point came when Cassie received a phone call from John Patterson of Patterson and Green, the Montclair family attorney. He wanted to schedule an appointment to discuss the baby's financial security. Cassie clenched her teeth and declined. If Xander wants me to talk to you, he can call me himself, she said, before hanging up. That same evening, she discovered a set of legal documents on the kitchen table. Xander was out. The top page read, Montclair Family Trust Amendments and Addenda. Curiosity and dread warred in her chest. She flipped through scanning lines about inheritance structures, controlling shares, vesting schedules for the baby upon turning 18. It all reeked of control. Then she noticed a section specifying certain paternal rights for Xander that in her reading seemed to overshadow her parental decisions. Her hands trembled. This was no simple trust. It was a framework that would effectively give the Montclairs final say in major aspects of their child's upbringing. Cassie's name appeared almost as an afterthought, a mere footnote to be consulted. Her heart pounded in her ears. She felt betrayed and alone. Slamming the documents shut, she called Lisa Harrington, her mentor, who rushed over to find Cassie, pale tears streaking her cheeks. "What the hell is this?" Cassie asked, pointing to the papers. Lisa read through them, her mouth tightening in anger. "It's exactly what it looks like. They want to ensure that no matter what happens, the baby is a Montclair with the Montclair fortune, the Montclair name, and Montclair rules." "That's not going to happen," Cassie said, voice trembling but resolute. "I won't let them." Lisa glanced around. "Where's Xander?" "Probably out planning more expansions." Cassie spat the bitterness raw on her tongue. 2 hours later, Xander stumbled into the apartment looking worn and contrite. He froze when he saw Cassie and Lisa, the legal documents spread across the coffee table. "Cassie, I can explain." She rose from her seat, her pregnancy bump prominent. "Explain what?" "That you've been working with your father to secure your paternal rights through a legal trust without even talking to me." He swallowed hard. "I was going to tell you. It's just complicated." "Not complicated," Cassie hissed. "It's betrayal." She showed him a page. "This states the Montclair Board of Trustees can intervene in educational and medical decisions if they deem me unfit." "Are you insane?" Xander looked horrified. This must be my father's edition. I didn't agree to this clause." Cassie shook her head, tears glistening. "You didn't stop it either." Lisa shot Xander a furious glance. "You have no idea how badly you've messed up Montclair," he pleaded with Cassie. "Let's talk about this privately." "Lisa, could you give us a minute?" Cassie asked quietly. Her mentor nodded, giving Xander one last glare before stepping out. Alone with Xander. Cassie unleashed weeks of pent-up anguish. "I've been trying so hard to trust you. But every time I turn around, you're caving to your family. Our child isn't even born yet, and they're already treating it like an asset." Xander's voice wobbled. "Cassie, I love you. I love this baby. I was trying to manage things so my father wouldn't cut us off from Montclair resources. I thought it would be easier if we just played along." She stared at him in disbelief. "Did you really think your father's money was more important to me than our autonomy? I don't want your family's fortune if it means losing control of our lives." He bowed his head. "I made a mistake. 1,000 mistakes. Please let me fix this." Cassie folded her arms over her chest. "That's what you said after you deleted our ultrasound. You never did fix that either." Xander reached for her hand, but she jerked away. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'll make it right. I'll tear up the documents, confront my father. Whatever it takes." She searched his eyes for the sincerity she once knew. "Words mean nothing now. Do it. Show me you can be the man I fell in love with, the one who wants this baby for the right reasons, not just to appease your father." He nodded, tears brimming. "I will," he said softly. "I promise." That night, Cassie moved into the guest room, shutting the door behind her. She felt a sense of quiet desolation, as though the once bright tapestry of their love had been ripped apart thread by thread. Even so, part of her still hoped that Xander would stand up to his family, that he would choose her and their child over money and ambition. Cassie's due date loomed just a few weeks away. She was heavy with child, and heavier with dread. Xander assured her that he'd cancelled the trust amendments, that he'd confronted his father about the intrusive legal overreach. Yet a nagging voice told her something still wasn't right. She had discovered texts in Xander's phone. This time she wasn't snooping. They appeared in a notification banner when she picked up his phone by mistake. They were from Charles Montclair, referencing new arrangements for the baby. Cassie felt her chest tighten. She didn't confront Xander immediately. She wanted to see if he'd come clean on his own. But he didn't. Instead, he grew more distant. Meetings stretched longer nights away from home, became more frequent. Cassie's baby bump was now unmistakably large, making even simple tasks challenging. She felt alone, as though Xander was slipping away, lost in a tangle of Montclair obligations. One afternoon, Cassie decided to pay an unannounced visit to Patterson and Green. If there were new arrangements being made, she wanted to see them firsthand. She explained her situation to a sympathetic receptionist who insisted she wait for John Patterson to return. He was out for a late lunch, apparently with Charles Montclair. Taking a leap, Cassie walked to the nearby restaurant on a hunch. She found Patterson and Charles seated at a corner table deep in conversation. Before she could turn to leave, Charles spotted her. He stood, beckoning her over. "Cassandra," he said in that clipped tone, "join us." Heart pounding, she approached the table. John Patterson offered a polite nod. Charles gestured for her to sit. "We were just discussing a new angle to ensure the Montclair holdings remain secure for future generations." Her stomach churned. Does that future generation include my child? Charles met her gaze evenly. The Montclair bloodline is paramount. She felt a surge of anger. I wasn't aware we were continuing trust negotiations. Xander told me he stopped all of this. Charles smirked. Alexander is conflicted, but he understands the necessity. I presumed he would have informed you by now. Cassie's blood ran cold. Informed me of what John Patterson cleared his throat. Mr. Montclair wants to set up an irrevocable trust for the baby, with certain stipulations that Cassie stood so abruptly her chair nearly toppled over. Stipulations that what? Override my parental rights. Charles merely shrugged, swirling the remnants of his drink. The Montclair name carries obligations. It's unfortunate you have trouble understanding that. She couldn't breathe. She felt the baby shift inside her, a stark reminder of the life she was protecting. Casting one last glare at Charles, she turned and walked out of the restaurant, tears streaming. That night, Xander came home, to find Cassie sitting calmly in the living room, the lights low. She looked up at him with a heart-breakingly steady gaze. "I know," she said simply. He blanched. "Know what I saw your father and Patterson today?" She gestured to a folder on the coffee table. "They have new documents. Another trust with terms you haven't even mentioned to me." He buried his face in his hands. "Cass, I'm sorry. I tried to fight him, but he said if I don't go along, he'll revoke every part of my inheritance. He'll sabotage my position at Sterling and Hyde. You have no idea how far he can go." She swallowed, tears forming. "So you chose your inheritance over our child's freedom? Over me?" He rushed forward, grasping her hands. "No, that's not it. I was trying to protect us. My father could ruin us financially. I thought we could sign something minimal just so he'd back off." "Minimal?" She choked out a humorless laugh. "You're still letting him make decisions about our baby. This child is a person, Xander, not a Montclair asset." He looked, desperate eyes darting, as if searching for an escape. I know. I made a mess. But Cassie, please, just a few more months after the baby is born. We can renegotiate." She jerked away from him, arms wrapping protectively around her belly. "I'm done being your negotiation chip. You don't get it, Xander. When you deleted that ultrasound from your phone, it was the first sign you didn't cherish what we created. Now you're handing our baby over to your father's control. I can't be part of this." His voice quavered. "What do you mean?" She stared at him, tears trembling on her lashes. "I can't trust you anymore, not with our child. So I'm deleting your name from our fortune, the fortune we were building together. The life we were building together. You're no longer a part of it." Xander's face went pale. "Cassie, don't do this. I love you. Please, we can fix it." She stood, resolute heartbreak etched into every line of her face. "It's too late," she whispered. "I won't let the Montclairs treat me or my child like property. You made your choice." Clutching her overnight bag, which she had packed earlier, Cassie walked out of the loft. Xander stood, frozen tears on his cheeks, unable to halt the unraveling of everything he once held dear. Cassie moved into a short-term rental near her mentor Lisa's apartment, determined to maintain independence as her due date approached. With Lisa's help and the support of her own parents, she prepared for single motherhood. Her father, Patrick Harrington, offered to fly in to be by her side, but she assured him she was fine, stronger in fact than she'd ever been. Still, heartbreak weighed heavy. She missed the Xander she had first fallen in love with, the idealistic boy who wanted to change the world through ethical investing. But the man he had become was too entangled in Montclair obligations. To protect her child, she had severed ties with the Montclair empire, an act that would reverberate far beyond a simple breakup. Amid her emotional upheaval, Cassie channeled her energy into the Harrington Scholarship Fund. She hosted a small charity dinner, raising additional donations from empathetic colleagues who admired her resilience. Each pledge was a reminder that she could still shape a better future, even if her personal life was in shambles. A week before her due date, she received an unexpected email. "Let's talk. Please." Xander. She ignored it, uncertain if she was strong enough to face him. But the next day, an unexpected visitor showed up at her building. Elizabeth Montclair stood in the lobby, her face unusually drawn. "Cassandra," she said quietly, wringing her gloved hands. "May I speak with you?" Cassie hesitated before letting her in. They sat in the modest living area of Cassie's rented space, a stark contrast to the Montclair mansion's opulence. Elizabeth looked around, clearly uneasy. Finally, she turned to Cassie. "I realize I've made this difficult. We all have. Charles especially, but I'm not innocent." Cassie folded her arms. "I'm listening." Elizabeth's composure wavered. "The Montclair name, our money. It's always been a source of pride and burden. I forgot that people, real living people, are more important than the fortune. I've come to apologize. I don't want to lose my grandchild before I ever get a chance to know him or her." Cassie blinked back tears. "And Xander? Does he know you're here?" Elizabeth shook her head. "He's miserable, Cassandra. He defied his father, refused to sign any final trust documents after you left. Charles threatened to cut him off entirely to ruin his standing at Sterling and Hyde. Xander refused to budge. They haven't spoken in days." Cassie's heart clenched. Part of her wanted to remain resolute to shield herself from Montclair drama. Yet hearing that Xander had finally taken a stand made her ache for what they'd lost. That night she opened Xander's email and typed out a simple reply. "We can meet. Tomorrow? 6 p.m. at the cafe, on 5th. The next day, Cassie waited in a cozy corner booth, hands trembling around a cup of herbal tea. When Xander arrived, he looked thinner, dark circles under his eyes. He sat across from her, and for a moment neither spoke. Finally he said, "I'm so sorry, Cassie. I've cut all ties with my father, his trust, his money, everything. I resigned from the Montclair board. He's furious, but I don't care anymore. I should have done it months ago. I'm so sorry I waited until it was too late." Cassie's eyes glistened. "Why now?" He swallowed, staring at his hands. "After you left, I realized I'd lost everything that mattered. The only reason I was holding on to my father's fortune was fear of losing the security, the name. But none of that is worth losing you, or our baby." Her voice trembled. "Is that enough? Xander, can you fix what's been broken?" He reached across the table and gently clasped her fingers. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I had to tell you that I'm not the same man who deleted that ultrasound. I want to start over if you'll let me. We don't need the Montclair money. We never did." Tears rolled down Cassie's cheeks. Part of her was furious at him for putting her through this torment, but another part still loved him fiercely. "I'm not promising anything," she whispered. "But thank you for standing up to your father. For our baby." They talked until the cafe closed, words tumbling over regrets and confessions, heartbreak and hope. By the end, they agreed to move slowly to see if trust could be rebuilt in the face of so much damage. A week later, Cassie went into labor. In the chaos of hospital corridors and beeping monitors, Xander remained by her side, holding her hand through every contraction. Hours later, they welcomed a baby girl, Ariana Rose Harrington Montclair, a blend of their shared heritage. When the nurse placed Ariana in Cassie's arms, Xander quietly took out his phone. He snapped a photo of Ariana's tiny face, solemn and new. Then he turned the phone to Cassie, tears shining in his eyes. "We're never deleting this one," he promised. Cassie's heart cracked open with love for the baby and a cautious hope for Xander. Perhaps redemption was possible after all. In the months that followed Ariana's birth, Cassie and Xander navigated the uncharted waters of parenthood. They traded midnight feedings, turned down high-powered meetings to attend pediatric appointments, and shared bleary-eyed mornings with coffee and lullabies. Their relationship was a fragile tapestry of old wounds, stitched with new devotion. Elizabeth Montclair made occasional visits bearing tasteful gifts and genuine attempts at reconciliation. Her husband, Charles, remained distant, outraged by Xander's refusal to comply with Montclair directives. Sterling and Hyde, much to everyone's surprise, kept Xander on board his brilliance as an analyst outweighed any threatened sabotage from Charles. Slowly, Cassie allowed herself to believe in them again, not just as co-parents, but as partners. They decided to start couples therapy, a place to untangle the knots of betrayal and resentment that had nearly destroyed them. In that safe setting, Xander apologized repeatedly for his failings, and Cassie voiced her deep hurt at being treated like a vessel for the Montclair legacy. Gradually, trust began to grow, nurtured by Ariana's bright presence. One sunny afternoon, they stood outside a modest townhouse in Brooklyn. The real estate agent jingled the keys. It wasn't the Montclair mansion, nor a palatial penthouse in Tribeca, but a warm, welcoming home with enough room for Ariana to grow. The Harrington Scholarship Fund thrived, aided by Cassie's tireless fundraising efforts, and Xander's strategic acumen, this time entirely separate from Montclair money. On moving day, Cassie found a worn leather journal tucked in Xander's box of personal belongings. A note peeked out from between the pages. Intrigued, she opened it. There, pressed carefully, was the old ultrasound photo they had printed at the hospital. Actually, a new print that Xander had requested from the clinic. Beside it was Ariana's newborn photo. She traced the images with her fingertips, tears filling her eyes. Xander appeared behind her, hands gently resting on her shoulders. "I know it's not the original," he said quietly, "but I wanted to keep them together, a reminder of what matters." Cassie turned, hugging him. For a moment they held each other close, the weight of the past melting away in the warmth of the present. They still had a long road ahead, with therapy sessions, deep conversations, and the constant balancing act of careers and parenthood. But they were forging a new legacy, one not defined by inheritance, but by love, growth, and mutual respect. When Ariana turned one, they held a small party at their townhouse. Close friends and family filled the living room. Elizabeth dropped by with a silver rattle tears in her eyes as she held her grandchild. Charles did not attend. Instead, he sent an ornate letter offering to reopen negotiations on the trust. Xander tore it up without a second glance. Toward the end of the party, Cassie and Xander found themselves alone in the nursery, watching Ariana pat a stuffed giraffe. Cassie leaned into Xander's side, a soft smile on her lips. He whispered, "You think we should take a family picture?" She nodded, fetching her phone. They knelt beside Ariana, and Xander held the phone out in front of them. Ariana squealed, reaching for the screen as the shutter clicked. Their grinning faces filled the frame. The perfect portrait of a family that had braved betrayal and come out the other side forever changed, but not broken. True to his word, Xander never deleted a single photo of his daughter. And though Cassie had once vowed to delete him from their fortune, she realized there was a far greater wealth they shared now, one that couldn't be measured in trust funds or real estate holdings. It was the wealth of a family, forged through trials, heartbreak, and unconditional love. In that sense, they were richer than any Montclair empire could ever rival. In life, our fiercest battles often rage where we least expect them, within our own hearts and the families we hold dear. Cassandra and Xander's journey reminds us that trust, once broken, can be painstakingly rebuilt if two people are willing to fight for it. Despite wealth, power, and the weight of family expectations, their greatest fortune lay in choosing each other, and choosing love over legacy. If you've been moved by this story of redemption and resilience, help us share its lessons with others. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who needs a reminder that hope can triumph even when everything seems lost. Your support helps us create more heartfelt tales and life-changing narratives. Together, let's continue exploring stories of courage, heartbreak, and the transformative power of love. Thank you for watching and believing in second chances.